Well, breast cancer is rarely a medical emergency. You have time, and that's the key. The conventional medical way of life has instilled this fear in people about cancer. It's a death sentence. You're going to suffer. It's going to be horrible. You may, or let's roll the dice to see if you'll live or not. So it's really about, as you were talking earlier, about taking responsibility for your health and find out, why did cancer show up in my body? Is there possibly a nutritional lifestyle connection? I mean, the information is out there. I mean, there's so much available to people. So take your time, sit with that diagnosis and make an informed decision.
This podcast is called Reconditioned because this is the place where you'll learn how to truly recondition your entire life. Where other wellness podcasts or platforms focus on one particular area of wellness or inner growth, Reconditioned is a one-stop shop for all of it, so that you can get all the information you need to heal and up-level the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of your life in one place. Because that's what I needed when I was healing from the arthritis I had from the age of 2 that left me disabled by 18. I got myself to a place of complete wellness after a very long journey of immersion into the world of healing, where I learned how to heal the whole self. My purpose now is about bringing that to you, and my Rise membership is an extension of that. For women who want to take their wellness and growth to the next level, there really is nothing out there like it. You'll be part of a global community of like-minded women with access to 14 modules that literally take you through everything you ever need to learn in order to bring your life to a place of balance and abundance. With group coaching calls with me, personalized support, community book club, and so much more. Rise becomes part of your life, your lifestyle, enabling you to thrive in the ways you always dreamed, with me right there beside you, championing you through your journey. It's not always open for enrollment, so if you're hearing this now, it's open and ready for you to enroll. Just go to the show notes for the link or visit laurenvakneen.co.uk/rise. Welcome back to Reconditioned with me, Lauren Vakneen. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm so happy and proud to bring you today's episode with Dr. V, who is breast cancer conqueror. And that's what we need. We need breast cancer conquerors, and less of the I am suffering from, I am a victim of, I am a survivor of, and more of, how she words it, my healing journey. She only calls, when she refers to the breast cancer that she had twice, she calls it her healing journeys, when she was healing from. Beautiful. There is so much wisdom to be learned and gained from this episode. She talks about her story, her own story, healing from breast cancer, and I'm excited for you to listen to it because there's so much nuance in it. And I think, as I mentioned in the episode, one of our biggest issues generally in society is we don't allow for nuance in anything. We expect everything to be black and white. Nothing has ever taught us that anything is black and white, because nothing in life, apart from maybe some mathematics, is black and white, and yet we still expect everything to be black and white. No healing journey is black and white. No, diagnosis of, or the reasons for onset of any disease is black and white. The great thing about this episode is we speak about where breast cancer is coming from, why it is happening, and more importantly, how to prevent it and how to heal it if you do get breast cancer. And one of the things I love about this episode is she really removes the fear out of breast cancer. We have such a fear of it. And she says, very rarely is breast cancer a medical emergency. And how refreshing is that to hear? We don't need to rush to make decisions, fear-based decisions that could end up costing us our lives. So in this episode, she really talks us through exactly how to prevent and heal with her 7 essentials, signature steps towards healing cancer, which is very interesting because, some of my colleagues in this field, many of us have a 6-step, a 7-step essentials, signature, pillars, whatever we want to call it. And they're usually pretty much the same things. So whether it's healing breast cancer, whether it is healing from autoimmunity, whatever it is, often it's just the whole healing of the whole self through a life optimization practice and approach is what's needed. But we go deep into this about specific things that are required for healing breast cancer, like biological dentistry, checking if you've got any tooth cavitations, not cavities, cavitations, and specific hormonal stuff that we get into. So really interesting stuff. If you are suffering, I did it myself. If you are healing from breast cancer, or you know anyone else who is healing from breast cancer, because let's change. I did it myself. I caught it, right? Let's change it. Let's change the narrative. Words hold vibration. Let's remember that I am healing from. If you are healing from breast cancer, if you know anyone else who is healing from breast cancer, please pass this episode on to them. Everything you need to be able to heal and maintain that healing is in this episode and all of Dr. V's work. She has a book as well, Healing Breast Cancer Naturally, and they've offered a section of that book for you guys, for my listeners, for free. So just go to the show notes and click the link to download that. I'd recommend, obviously, buying the whole book, which we will link as well. And I hope you enjoy this episode. And if you are healing from breast cancer, I truly hope it gives you the hope that you need to go deep into your healing journey and understand that that healing journey has happened for a reason. It's not happening to you, it is happening for you. And there is so much on the other side of that for you. So I am sending you much love, and I'm sending you all much gratitude for being here once again. Here is our episode with Dr. V. Dr. Veronique Desaulnier, better known as Dr. V, is the founder of Breast Cancer Conqueror and the 7 Essentials System. Her signature process has empowered thousands of women in over 63 countries around the world. Her mission is to save lives one breast at a time. So welcome, Dr. V.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren. I'm very excited to be here. Your story is fascinating, and thank you for all that you do to share that message of hope to your audience.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you as well. Did I pronounce your name right?
Amazingly, you did well. People have a
my
hard
French
time,
roots came in there.
there you go.
So before we get started, and I know my audience is so excited to hear, all your knowledge and your wisdom. What have you done today to support your wellness so far?
Today, this morning?
Today, this morning.
Okay, well, I always start my day with drinking special concoctions. It may be colostrum, it may be powdered psyllium seed, and maybe a bunch of probiotics or whatever. And I go for about a 2 to 3 mile walk and come back, stretch, and then my day starts. And depending on my schedule, I may be able to get out and play tennis, or I may be able to get out and, do some additional running and do some light weights. Supplementation is always an important part of my day, and obviously good food. I try to do some intermittent fasting, and typically don't eat anything until noon or 1 o'clock, and that's what we've done so far.
Your morning routine sounds very similar to mine, other than the tennis. I don't play tennis.
Okay.
So you've been watching Wimbledon, right?
Absolutely. Recorded and watching in between interviews and work during the day.
Amazing. Yeah. So while we're recording this, for all those listening, Wimbledon is happening right now, along with the rain. But you're in sunny Florida.
Yes.
So let's start from the beginning. Always a great place to start. I think it's really important to give context to what you do, to understand your story and your background and how you came to do what you do now.
Well, it started a long time ago. I'm a chiropractor by profession, and in 2004, I was getting ready for work and felt, I was in the shower and I felt a lump in my left breast, and just my gut told me right away it was just not your typical, benign cyst. I just felt, there was something going on there. So that was very difficult for me because, I started practicing in 1980, where wellness was not really a
Mm-hmm.
thing just yet, so I was really a wellness warrior. I was ahead of my time, and I ate organic before organic was in style. I had home births, breastfed my children, exercised, did a lot of nutritional work, and shared that with my patients at the time. And so when I realized that there was something going on in my left breast, it was like, how could this happen to me? I thought I was doing everything right. So I had to really kind of sit down and look at what allowed the cancer to show up in my life. Obviously, there was things out of balance. So I wanted to be able to create a system that I could check off the boxes to make sure that I was covering all the bases. So I sat down with pen and paper, and literally it felt like a download. And that's how the 7 Essentials came about. So from 2004 through 2006, went through my first healing journey. And after I stopped practicing, sold my practice, and I was trying to figure out what, the next chapter of my life was going to be. And so many people were telling me, you should share about your healing journey, because I chose not to do anything conventional. I did everything naturally. So I threw up a website in 2012, and before I knew it, women were contacting me from all over, and one thing led to another. And now my team and I have supported women actually in 65 countries now. We need to update that bio. Um, and we've really made an impact in the breast cancer world. But something interesting happened to me in 2015. I was working from sun up to sundown. I was very passionate about my work. I was coaching all these women with breast cancer, and I neglected my self-care. I forgot about what it took to maintain that health. And I created the perfect storm for breast cancer to show up again. I wasn't sleeping well. My hormones were out of balance. I had some dental issues, thyroid issues. And here we go, 2015. And that one was pretty devastating to me, because I was the face of healing breast cancer naturally. And here I was, with another diagnosis. So I really had to do a lot of deep diving, and I changed everything about my life. I realized that, my lifestyle allowed cancer to show up again. So I had to do things differently. So I stopped coaching. I trained coaches to do the coaching for me. I literally, cut back on my work by half. So the rest of the day was designed to nurture myself, to do, I had to drive at the time because we lived up in North Georgia in the mountains. I had to drive an hour and a half one way to get my IVs. And a lot of things had changed in 9 years, from 2006 to 2015. So there was a lot more information, a lot more testing that was easily available. And so I took a deep dive. It took me 3 years to heal. And so August, it'll be 6 years. So doing well, happier and healthier than I've ever been.
Wow, what a story. I have so many questions from everything you just said. The first thing just to say is I had a very similar situation when I healed the arthritis and was the face of healing autoimmunity and teaching people how to do it. And then I had my son, and I had this horrendous flare up, this huge flare up that seemingly came out of nowhere. It wasn't out of nowhere. It was all the pregnancy and breastfeeding hormones and everything. And I felt ashamed. I felt like I was a fraud. But it was such a good teacher, because it reminded me I'm always going to have an underlying autoimmune disease, and it's up to me to maintain it and keep it, level. And of course, once you've had a baby, there's only so much you can do. The hormones are going to be there. But then after my daughter, same thing happened, but the flare up lasted for half the time that it did with my son, because I think I'd kind of realized what to do. So it was only 5 months that time. But just to kind of validate that I, had very similar, and it makes you feel, and that's, I think, because people see everything as black and white, and nothing is black and white. And what I've learned about health and healing is that nothing is black and white and everything needs nuance, and we need to come to it with that mindset of nuance.
Absolutely.
So the first question I have for you is, what do you think, being that you lived the lifestyle you lived already, what was it in your mind that caused you to get breast cancer?
Well, the first time, there was definitely a huge emphasis on emotions. I was in a very unhappy marriage. I was raising 3 children. I was, I had a very busy, successful practice. I was spending a lot of time in my, volunteer Bible education work. So there was, just my life was so full, and I was just the hamster on the wheel and never managed my stress properly. So I think that was a big key for that. And of course, there was a lot of things that I didn't know. I had the MTHFR, I had that weakness. I wasn't methylating my hormones properly. And there was just a lot to learn over the next 9 years. The second time, it was very similar. I just overworked and overstressed, and I wasn't balancing my hormones. I wasn't sleeping. I mean, sleep is such a huge part of healing and staying well. And so it's, it's like you say, it's not just one thing, it's a combination of things, and your body is always trying to, gain balance somehow. And when there's pieces of the puzzle that aren't there, then it can't. And, then things happen to our body. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important for people to understand that as well, because it's so easy to say, oh, I've heard people say this before, she did everything right and still look at what happened. So I might as well live my life however I want. And
Exactly.
again, there's so much more nuance to that. You can live very healthily and there still be trapped emotions, trapped inside your body. Like you've said, you can have dentistry issues. You could have had, wisdom tooth extractions or tooth extractions, root canals that have caused cavitations, which we'll definitely get onto soon because I'm a big fan of that topic. And I know you are too. So many things, past trauma that hasn't been resolved. And so I think it's so important for people, and especially women, to understand that these things do impact us. However, holistically we live. And that's why kind of I do what I do to heal the whole person. My whole ethos is bringing together the healing of the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And like you say, being overworked, not having that life balance. So, one thing I'd like to ask before we kind of move on to the next topic and kind of the healing process itself is, when you found out the first time that you had breast cancer, and you didn't go for the conventional treatments, did you have conventional testing, and did you go for mammography? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on mammograms.
I've never had a mammogram, so I did not do mammography. I did thermography. I also did bioenergetic testing, and I did blood work that, confirmed. At the time, there was a test that measured the ENOX2 protein, and unfortunately, that test is not available anymore. But in both times, in 2004 and then 2015, there was that. I mean, that was proof that there was a breast cancer issue going on.
So that kind of clarifies that there are enough tools out there that we don't need to use mammograms, which we know can potentially have risks, can create more cancer than it's not predicting. What's the word I'm looking for? Diagnosing.
Right. And then ultrasound too. Ultrasound is a great tool. I always recommend women that if they choose to do a mammogram, then they should back it up with an ultrasound. I mean, just yesterday, I was speaking to, I think it was a client, or I forget who it was, but she had a mammogram in April, perfectly clear, so they say. And by August, she had a huge lump. So, we know that mammography it's passe. I mean, it's, let's move on to things that are less less, that have fewer side effects and can be much more effective and consistent in the screening.
Yeah, it's about modern medicine kind of keeping up with the actual information that's out there. We're seeing so many results and so much information and evidence and knowledge about, sound and color and frequency healing. And modern medicine still needs to catch up with that. They're getting there. I mean, sometimes. Right. What would you say the most common risks are with mammograms?
Well, first of all, we know radiation causes cancer. And so if you're compressing the breast tissue and you're causing, you're radiating them, what if there's a small tumor in there and you're compressing it? It has a potential of, releasing a lot of cancer cells into the bloodstream. And we know, statistically, the British Journal of Radiology years ago stated that chronic low dose radiation can increase your risk of breast cancer. We know it causes DNA damage. Now they're even saying that it could potentially be turning off the BRCA gene. We know the BRCA gene is a tumor suppressor gene, and they push for the familial or the genetic component of BRCA, but a lot of women don't have that component anymore. And so they're seeing that environmentally and definitely radiation can cause that gene to backfire.
I know, interrupting an episode with an ad is so annoying, I know. But guys, I want to ask you not to fast forward this and listen for just 2 minutes, because there is a huge element of health optimization and reducing risk of illness that most people don't even realize. You need to be reducing artificial blue light in the home and get targeted red light on your body. The reason is because when the body registers blue light, your brain, based on evolution, assumes it's early daytime. But our brains in 2024 are registering blue light from our light bulbs and our screens at literally all hours, prompting our bodies to produce cortisol, the stress hormone, as well as other hormones we just shouldn't be producing at night. This affects our stress and anxiety levels, and it stops the cells in our bodies being able to repair and regenerate at night. And let me be clear, when our cellular health is compromised, we literally cannot stay healthy. And our amazing partner, Block Blue Light, have created some incredible light bulbs that allow you to switch between settings and have only amber light at night, which is what we kitted our whole house out with when we renovated a few years ago. And if you do need to work after dark, like I have to sometimes, Block Blue Light also have amazing blue light blocking red light glasses, some that fit over your usual glasses, and they can even custom make glasses with your prescription. They also have some of the most powerful and effective red light machines on the market, using photobiomodulation to help keep the mitochondria in your cells healthy, something we cannot be healthy without, as well as helping your body to produce more collagen for bones and joints, and to keep skin looking great as you age. It also supports pain and recovery, and red light is said to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's because of how it impacts brain health. We can't control everything happening in this modern world that affects our health, but my personal motto is to mitigate where we can and put in place everything we can for the things we can control, and blue light is one of them. You can get a 10% discount across the range by visiting blockbluelight.co.uk and using the code LV10. Okay, back to the show. Wow. Let's talk about that while we're here, while you've mentioned the BRCA gene. I've always found it quite fascinating. I'm a prevention over cure kind of person, and I suppose just from my own journey. And without having too much information on it at the time, and no judgment to her, but I remember when Angelina Jolie went through her mastectomy, instinctively, intuitively, I felt there must be a better way for you. And I get that you've, watched your mother have this horrible death, and she didn't want that, and she had children, and so no judgment, but I'm sure there's another way. And since then, having, gone deeper into my own journey and learning about breast cancer or cancer prevention generally, understanding your genes is, hugely empowering. I know that when I had my genes test and was able to go into, really study what does it mean to have MTHFR and the COMT gene and, all these other kind of gene polymorphisms, and actually educate myself on what that means. Understanding, for example, with MTHFR, my body's not methylating properly. Well, what does that mean for me? And what can I do to help myself? And there were many things I was able to do. So for anyone listening to this who might have recently found out they have the BRCA gene, what would your recommendation be?
Don't panic.
Yeah.
And do your research. We have many women in our community over the years who were, BRCA gene positive, and they are thriving and doing well. It's a matter of understanding, the science of epigenetics now,
Right.
looking at, how our genes are expressed and what triggers them to be turned off or on. So our lifestyle, our food, our stress level, the toxins, all these things have a huge impact. And there's so much evidence on that. Forget his name. He's done a lot of research in epigenetics, and he took a group of men who had prostate cancer, and in just 6 weeks, by changing their lifestyle, their diet, getting them to meditate, they turned off over 400 cancer promoting genes. Wow. And turned on, hundreds of other positive genes in just 6 weeks. So if you have the BRCA gene, it depends on how it's expressed. If you support a healthy lifestyle, it may not necessarily be expressed. But if you throw a lot of toxins and stress into your body, then chances are it will be expressed.
Mm. Was it Ben Lynch that did that study?
No, Dean Ornish. There you go.
Say that again.
Dr. Dean Ornish.
Ah, okay, right.
Yeah, he's done a lot of studies on epigenetics.
Yeah, I think understanding epigenetics is key to prevention. And I think the key to health is prevention. The key to longevity is working towards a preventative approach. And perhaps our biggest problem in society is that we live as if we'll never get ill, and then get shocked when we get sick, even though we've done nothing to prevent it, and then expect someone else to fix us. And so all those three things that lead to that are the wrong way around. We should be working towards our own healing and our own prevention. And then, we can't get shocked if we're not doing the things that, contribute to a healthy lifestyle and to longevity. And then if we do get sick, it's up to us to take responsibility and ownership of our healing. As opposed to outsourcing it. And of course, we can outsource it. We can ask people for help and we can work with incredible practitioners. But I think the idea is that we give away our power quite freely when it comes to our health. And especially when it comes to cancer, because the word cancer breeds so much fear. And that's something I'd like to speak to you about, because one thing I notice with anyone I've ever spoken to who gets a cancer diagnosis, whether it's family, friends, or clients, and we're seeing so much more of it, is that the fear instilled in them pushes them to make a decision they're not ready to make. And I learned from my own journey, and my mum always taught me never make a decision from a place of fear. And my mum was so strong in the 80s, making a decision not to do that for me and put me on the steroids. And so I wonder what your advice would be to someone who's perhaps recently been diagnosed and hasn't yet made a decision, is pausing and having a think about it and wondering, okay, what should I do here? Because the doctors are saying that it's urgent and I need to do this and we need to move quickly. And it is time sensitive. Of course, cancer is time sensitive. So what would your advice be?
Well, breast cancer is rarely a medical emergency. You have time, and that's the key. The conventional medical way of life has instilled this fear in people about cancer. It's a death sentence. You're going to suffer. It's going to be horrible. You may, or let's roll the dice to see if you'll live or not. So it's really about, as you were talking earlier, about taking responsibility for your health and find out, why did cancer show up in my body? Is there possibly a nutritional lifestyle connection? The information is out there. There's so much available to people. So take your time, sit with that diagnosis and make an informed decision. Interview more than one doctor. Remember, they're working for you. And so if you feel stressed or pushed to, get on that conveyor belt and go through all those treatments, just take a pause. I mean, I talked to somebody just the other day. She interviewed 5 doctors before she came on a decision to work with somebody, and do a lot of reading. There's so many success stories out there that can give you hope, and there's always hope. There's always hope, because hope can pull you forward, and it can really help you to get through some challenging times, because there will be, whether you choose conventional or natural or combination of both. Healing is not easy. It takes a lot of determination, and physical changes in your body, emotional changes, but it's very doable.
Yeah, and I would echo that about hope. I learned that on my own journey, and the most important thing I think I learned about that is that it is a choice. We can choose to have hope, or we can choose to see the negative in what's going on. And whatever choice you make will probably become your truth, because everything is energy and thoughts hold vibration. So making that choice to have hope, and sometimes you've got to fake it till you make it. And that's also okay. Sometimes that's how you get there.
Right.
And for anyone listening who is in the UK, when Dr. V was talking about, interviewing doctors, people in the UK, we have the National Health Service here, right? So it's, I use quote marks, free at the point of serve, at the point of entry. We pay for it with our taxes and in many other ways. We don't always have the choice to interview 5 doctors. But what I will say to people listening is that you do always have a choice to ask for a second opinion, and it's very much within your rights to do that. So even with the NHS, and something I find very challenging watching is, because we have this service and it's quote unquote free, there's this almost irrational level of gratitude that it's there. So we put up with a lot more than people who pay for it would put up with, which is why there are so many more mistakes on the NHS than anywhere else. Because we put up with it, and we don't ask for second opinions, and we don't ask to see someone else. So for anyone listening, you absolutely have the right to ask for a second opinion, and you should. So I just wanted to put that out there for our UK listeners.
Yes. Well, I grew up in Canada, so I understand that system.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's, the American system is no better. In many ways, it's worse, because, people are incentivized by money. So that, that comes with many of its own challenges. Having a free system also comes with many challenges as well, for different reasons. The last question I want to ask before we go on to your 7 essentials and actually talk about the healing of breast cancer and the prevention of breast cancer, is, once you've had breast cancer, what is it that makes it come back in the same place? So what is it that makes you have breast cancer again, which is what you had, as opposed to perhaps another cancer, or perhaps, onset of an autoimmune condition, or something else that your body could tell you, you need to change things?
That's a very good question. There's something called breast cancer stem cells, or cancer stem cells. And when you heal your body and there's no evidence of disease, quote unquote, you're cancer free, which I don't like to use that term, because you're never really cancer free.
Right.
Those cells are laying dormant, and they're very opportunistic. And so when the environment or the terrain is right, then they will start to flourish and create, mature cancer cells. So that's the basis of recurrence. And interestingly, that's one of the biggest fears that women have when they have breast cancer, is the fear of recurrence. Because it's always at the back of your mind, will it come back? Will it, and they don't really understand what they can do to prevent that. But the good news is breast cancer stem cells are very sensitive to things like curcumin, high-dose melatonin, vitamin D, medicinal mushrooms, EGCG, all the things that you do to get well in the first place. You just don't have to do it as intense as in the past. And there is testing that can be done There's a company, I don't know if you're familiar with it, RGCC. It's known as the Greece test, and because the first lab started off in Greece, but what they do is they filter your blood and they literally measure the number of circulating tumor cells and stem cells in your blood. And then they'll grow your cancer cells in the lab and will dose 50 different natural substances to see which ones are more effective against those cancer cells. You can also test for chemotherapy agents, up to 50 chemotherapy agents as well. And so that's the testing that I did in my second healing journey, because it showed me that I still had, circulating tumor cells. And a couple of months ago, I test once a year now as prevention, and my numbers are the lowest it's ever been. So, yeah.
That's amazing. So with those things that you were talking about, medicinal mushrooms and all the things you were talking about, is there kind of a maintenance regime that you live by and that you recommend to clients that's different to the healing?
Oh, absolutely. It's living the 7 essentials lifestyle, which we'll get into shortly, but, and always continue to test. As I mentioned, I have blood work done at least twice a year to check for inflammatory markers, making sure my vitamin D levels are good, and all the things that we test for. And then I do the RGCC to measure the circulating tumor cells, and so I do have a supplementation regime. It's not as intense, obviously, but I definitely stick with that, and and I live by the 7 essentials. So.
What are the blood tests that someone should ask for? Are there specific? Because again, in the UK, we are at the mercy of the NHS, where we often get what they give. For instance, when we have a thyroid test, they don't check T3, they check T4 and TSH. You have to be under an endocrinologist specifically. You can't just go to your local GP. So what is the blood work we're asking for to make sure that we are keeping on top of that?
The inflammatory markers, the basic ones are C-reactive protein, LDH, and ESR. I also like to add homocysteine in there, because a lot of people don't recognize that they may have a problem with methylation, and homocysteine is always high if there's a methylation issue. So those are basic. And then, vitamin D, and then just doing the regular CMP, CBC. That can also tell you something. Checking your thyroid, checking for autoimmune diseases, checking for viruses, especially Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus. They're very opportunistic. They're always there in the background, checking for candida, checking for parasites. You have to keep a pulse on your health. And so always test, don't guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such great advice with the specific tests as well. So let's go to the 7 essentials, which is kind of your signature process. So can you give us an overview of all 7, and hopefully we can go deeper into each one?
Okay, so essential number 1 is let food be your medicine. Number 2 is to reduce your toxic exposure. Number 3 is balancing your energy, and that is everything from your sleep, your hormones, your exercise. There's a lot of balancing that we have to do, balancing your nerve system. Number 4 is healing the emotional wounds. Number 5 is the dental connection, embracing biological dentistry. 6 is healing your body with therapeutic plants and herbs. And this is all the things, all the supplements, all the things that we can do. And number 7 is early detection. So keeping a pulse on your health with all the blood work and the testing that we talked about.
Amazing. And it's so concise when it's like that. Like you say, it's a checkbox and we can go through and we can tick off. So let's start with let food be thy medicine. What are the essentials? What is kind of a cancer-free, life-friendly nutrition plan?
Well, again, I always recommend to test and not guess. So personally, I like doing some genetic testing. So there's a really good test called the nutrition genome. It looks at your genetic SNPs and weaknesses to see what foods and supplements best support those weaknesses. So it takes the guesswork out of what your diet is. I'm not if somebody comes to me and says, plant-based is the only way to heal cancer, I will disagree with them, because I've seen plenty of vegetarians who juiced, 20 pounds of carrots every day, and they were not doing well. So measuring your blood sugar is a good way to assess how your body is using what you're eating. And that's one thing that I learned in my second healing journey, because I had juiced for 30 years. And so I really ramped it up in that second healing journey. And I noticed that I wasn't feeling well after I did my juicing. So at first I thought, well, maybe you're just detoxing. But after weeks and weeks of this, so I happened to had been at a conference about the metabolic approach to healing cancer. And I met Dr. Thomas Siegfried, Dr. Nasha Winters, and they really opened my eyes to the connection between the insulin growth factors and the spiking of your blood sugar, making you metabolically inflexible, which can really affect your healing, because it'll literally turn on cancer promoting genes. So that was a big aha for me. So when it comes to food, obviously organic as much as you can, lots of greens, lots of veggies, modified fruit for some, and I'm one of those. I'm a balanced carnivore, so I do need some meat protein. Some do better when they're, a balanced vegetarian and do some sort of protein that way.
Is that a blood type thing?
It's different. The balanced carnivore actually comes from Dr. Nick Gonzalez, who looks at another way of metabolically approaching cancer. He looks at your nerve system. The questionnaire looks at your nerve system, whether you're sympathetic dominant or parasympathetic dominant, and based on that and the type of cancer you have, then there's certain diets that will come up. I am an O blood type, which makes me more of a carnivore, but the nutrition genome also really, nailed it. I need the protein.
Yeah. So this is great, right? Because I always hear, should I be, on a raw vegan diet, or should I be on keto? And everyone has such strong opinions about it. And I know, people who have written books about keto diet for cancer, but and I've seen people heal through keto with cancer, but it's very much what you're saying is a personalized approach. And in order to know which diet you need for you, if at any point you get cancer, going down the road of testing for that. So remind me of what is the test we need for that?
It's called the nutrition genome test.
Perfect.
That's the genetic one. And then Dr. Nick Gonzalez, for $100, you can take his test online, and it'll tell you if you're more carnivore or if you're more vegetarian, and they have a whole dietary plan based on that as well.
And can you do that test even if you don't have cancer? Like, is there a way that they show you how to just eat based on your...
Yeah, you don't need cancer to figure that out.
Amazing. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and do that myself.
Okay, good.
Reducing your toxic exposure, such a huge one. And toxins are coming from so many directions. And, I always say there is so much, people will say, well, what's the point? Because, there's so much we can't control. And I'm like, yeah, there's so much we can't control, which is exactly why we mitigate where we can control it. So what are your top tips and place, the things in life that we're doing that we really need to be limiting our exposure to?
Well, we can't live in a bubble, obviously, right? We live in a toxic world. When it comes to breast cancer specifically, you want to be very aware of what we call xenoestrogens, or chemical estrogens. And that's everything from plastics to phthalates to parabens, things in the environment. There, even EMFs have an impact because it affects our melatonin. We know melatonin is a cytotoxic hormone that kills cancer cells. So there's so much to look at. But there's, a methodology, once you find out, what type of cancer that you have, then, really start looking at your environment in your yard. What kind of chemicals are you using in your yard? Look in your home. Are you using toxic cleaners? Are you using artificial candles or sprays? It's all these little things that build up that bucket of toxicity, and eventually the bucket is overflowing. But there's a lot of things that you can do, even though we are exposed to glyphosates, even though we try to eat organic food. Coffee enemas, sweating. Sweating is one of the best ways to get rid of environmental chemicals and heavy metals. There was a study called the BUS study, blood, urine, and sweat, and they compared those three areas to see what, which one showed up more toxins after, doing different types of cleansing. And sweat by far had the highest level of detoxification for the body. Making sure that you do liver cleanses and colon cleanses and, just dry skin brushing, all these little things that you can do to keep that lymphatic system, to keep those toxins moving out of your system. Modified citrus pectin is a great anti-inflammatory agent, but it's also a very good heavy metal detoxer. And, there's bindings, there's all kinds of things that we can do to really give our body the help that it needs to deal with the toxicity we live in.
Yeah, amazing. I agree. Like there's so many things we can do to mitigate, the toxins that we're exposed to, which it's kind of this idea. I don't like to live from a place of fear. So as opposed to going around saying, oh my God, everything's so toxic, and it's more a case of, okay, what can we do? We have systems in our home that reduce the EMFs. We don't buy toxic mattresses or toxic, furniture, anything that's going to off gas. We buy secondhand or, latex mattresses or whatever it might be. There are so many things we can do to limit our exposure to toxicity. And I think that often goes kind of unnoticed. I think that's something that people miss a lot when they start kind of thinking about healthy living. I'll eat organic and, I'll do a bit of juicing, but that toxic exposure element is so important.
Very much so, yes.
Next on our list is balancing your energy.
So we are 1/1000th physical matter. The rest is all energy. So we balance our energy through chiropractic care, which balances your nerve system, acupuncture, exercise, making sure that you move your body every single day, balancing your sleep. It's so important to get that restorative sleep, because if you're not sleeping well, your body's not detoxing and repairing itself while you sleep. And then for breast cancer specifically is balancing your hormones, or any other kind of cancer, really. Your hormones need to be balanced. And that includes your thyroid as well. Conventional medicine has really vilified women's hormones. They've really instilled fear. If you have an ER/PR positive cancer, oh no, your hormones are driving the cancer. And so we have to shut off your hormones to make sure you don't keep feeding the cancer. But if we step away and think about things logically, if our hormones cause cancer, then every 20-year-old on the planet would have cancer. They're thriving, full of hormones at that age. So we need our hormones for our brain health, our cardiovascular health, our bone health, our immune system. I mean, everything. We need those hormones. It's not our natural God-given hormones that are causing cancer. It's all the chemical hormones that we're exposed to. And the second factor may be that perhaps you have an inability to detox your body properly, including your hormones. So you're not methylating or metabolizing your hormones. So the metabolites of the estrogens are recirculating. And that can certainly trigger if you have, those unhealthy metabolites in your body. So don't live in fear of hormones. Your hormones do not cause cancer. And, one question that comes up a lot for women is, my doctor gave me this medication and I feel terrible. I am sweating, and blah, blah, all these terrible side effects. And so they make the decision that they won't live in fear, and they do things to support that methylation process to keep their balance, their hormones balanced. Testing with saliva to make sure that your hormones are in the right ratio. Blood testing doesn't tell you much when it comes to hormones. Doing urine tests to see what your metabolites are when you're, secreting your hormones. So don't live in fear of your hormones. You need them.
What is one of your kind of top tips, or a few of your top tips for balancing your hormones?
Test, do some saliva testing to see what is out of balance. You do some blood work to check your thyroid. Many women with breast cancer are iodine deficient, and they've been told that, they need to be on this thyroid medication. Women who are on synthetic thyroid medication are twice as likely to develop breast cancer than those who are not. That's because it's hiding the symptom and it's not allowing the thyroid to really function properly. And they're iodine deficient most of the time. And we're seeing more and more, Hashimoto's and iodine autoimmune diseases because of all the toxicity in the world. So those are very critical. Checking your adrenal glands, which when you do saliva test, it does look at your cortisol levels. And so that's the best way, really.
And what are your top tips for getting balanced sleep?
Don't look at your electronics at least for an hour before bed. Use blue light filters, red light in your home, red light glasses if you do stay on electronics. Make sure that your mattress and your sheets are clean and preferably organic, but they're not off-gassing. No electronics in your bedroom. Turn your Wi-Fi off at night. You don't need it. Make sure your room is very dark. If there's city lights and you can't, the curtains aren't doing enough for you, then wear an eye mask. I'm a fan of checking, if you're having problems with sleep, there's a saliva test that you can do that can check for your neurotransmitters. And I did that because I had insomnia for many, many years after I went through menopause, and understanding what was off in my brain really helped. And I was able to supplement with different herbs and nutrients to help bring that to balance. And now I sleep like a baby 95% of the time. So
amazing. A question I have for you, you mentioned testing a lot. I'm thinking about the women who might be listening to this that might not be able to afford all of those tests. What is the best is there one test that you would recommend if they had to choose? And also, if just say someone's listening who can't afford to do any of those tests, they can only do the ones that are being given to them on the NHS or whatever they're being given, depending on where they are. Where is the best place to start?
Just in general, I would check, inflammatory markers if they can get those done. And, even just running the basic blood work can give you an idea about what's happening in your body. And saliva testing, it's probably about $250 US. So I know it translates differently in Europe, but it just gives you so much information that is so important to balance your hormones.
Yeah. Okay, so healing your emotional wounds, such a big one. I know that, and I've seen through my own clients as well, there is such a link, and I'd love to get your take on this. Women who have experienced sexual trauma, especially during childhood, but kind of any sexual trauma, I see this come up. I see breast cancer come up in these women time and time again. What is the link between sexual trauma and breast cancer?
Well, I was sexually abused by a convicted pedophile in the late 1950s when I was between the age of 3 to 5 years old. I had repressed that memory, and it wasn't until my late 40s that I discovered. I was doing a lot of therapy, cognitive therapy, and the therapist kept telling me, you have the makings of somebody who's been sexually abused. And I said, no. My parents were alcoholics. I grew up in an alcoholic home, but no sexual abuse. And then one day I was driving home from the appointment, and it was like, bam. It was like I saw the screen and the memory of what had happened to me. And of course, I was a little hysterical when I got home, called my therapist. She says, well, just calm down, let's make sure that this is real. Just call your mom, call your sisters, and see if they know anything about it. And I'll never forget it. You know, when I called my mother, who lived in Canada at the time, I mean, and I asked her, it was like dead silence on the phone. She was shocked. And then she's like, how could you remember that? You know, you were so young. So they knew, the family knew, but it was a family secret. Um, so it was very difficult to understand what had happened to me. So there was a lot of healing in, you know, the inner child work that I had to do, that I choose to do. And on the other hand, it was a relief because it helped me to understand why I made so many bad decisions about relationships and how I lived my life and the choices I had made, you know, all those years. So um, it was a blessing in a way, but it was definitely very, very difficult. So the connection between sexual abuse and breast cancer is very clear because you feel unworthy, you don't trust men. Breast cancer is all about nurturing, feeling safe, family bonds, and you know, if you lack that foundation when you're just a child, you know, you grow up making bad decisions. You're that wounded child living in an adult body. So there's definitely a correlation. And I would have to say a good 60 to 70% of the women we've coached have some form of sexual abuse in their background.
I've seen that as well. I'm so sorry for your experience. I was completely kind of shocked listening to that.
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah, I see that a lot with clients. There's definitely a correlation. I think Louise Hay talks about it as well, in terms of kind of, you know, what physical ailments we have and kind of what emotions they're connected to. And I kind of, Dr. Bradley Nelson talks about that in the emotion code as well. So that sort of somatic healing work, you know, for me, I think is so important, actually removing that emotion from the body. What would be your process for going through healing of something like that?
So what I did is I did some cognitive therapy with, you know, a trained psychologist. And then I also did EFT. I had 2 different EFT coaches, a lot of journaling, a lot of reading, a lot of meditating, and really putting my body into the parasympathetic relaxation mode. I didn't know what that felt like, even though I meditated for decades. When I went through my second healing journey, I learned about the Heart Math Institute and heart rate variability. I used their little app, and you know, still do, to look at how my nerve system is responding to my meditation, because you might think you're relaxed, but until I put that clip on my ear and I saw that I was still staying in the fight or flight mode when I was meditating, my nerve system was not relaxing. And so that was a big shift for me to really understand, you know, what it felt like to get into that relaxation response. And, you know, we tell our clients, you know, your body can't heal if it feels like it's being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, right? So you really, every day, it's so important to get into that relaxation mode.
Yeah. What are your best ways for doing that?
For me, it's meditating and using the Heart Math app. And after doing it for so many years, sometimes I don't need the Heart Math app. Sometimes it's just, you know, deep breathing, relaxation. Sometimes it's just taking a nap, you know, and just taking a power nap for 20 minutes, you know, in the middle of the afternoon, just to really get your body to calm down. And it taught me to notice when my body was getting stressed or when I was getting stressed. It's a trigger for me now. If I'm feeling stressed, I say no, I walk away, I turn off the computer, you know, I shift, I go outside, I stretch, get in the sunshine, go for a walk. You know, so it's very important that you get off that hamster wheel every day.
Yeah. And I would just kind of elaborate on what you said about getting out into the sun. I think adding kind of nature to that list of things we can do, take a nap, you know, all of it, you know, meditate. For me, I know that when I get out into nature, I know that my nervous system really starts regulating. Just going for a
Hmm.
walk in the woods, even if I can't see the sunshine,
Yeah.
just nature helps us. And actually something I learned from the Heart Math Institute, that place is amazing. And they've got an image, a visual, that shows the heart's electromagnetic field. And that helps me. I'm a very visual person. So people say that a lot
Hmm.
recently, don't they? Like, I'm a very visual person, but I am. And so if I see an image of something, and I saw this image of the heart's electromagnetic field and how it kind of emanates from us and
Yeah.
how it changes based on how we feel and what we're projecting and what we're putting out and when we're in nature. So I think understanding how nature regulates us is so important. And the thing I love about nature is it's free. We don't have to pay to be in it.
Hmm. And they really taught me a lot about the heart brain connection. I mean, the heart is a mini brain.
Hmm.
Actually, the heart talks to the brain more than the brain talks to the heart. So it sends out hormones and nerve system messages and pulse messages and electromagnetic messages. So it's a very communicative organ that they had no clue until 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Something like the heart actually has 40,000 brain neurons in it or something like that.
Hmm.
Fascinating. So next on the list is biological dentistry. Now, I am a bit obsessed with biological dentistry since I found out I had a cavitation that was causing trigeminal neuralgia, or was one of the contributing factors causing trigeminal neuralgia, triggering it. And most people do not know about it. It really is still very fringe, very out there on the woo woo, which is just crazy. And conventional dentists know nothing about it, don't know how to diagnose cavitations, can't take an x-ray where they can see a cavitation. Can you explain why this takes up an entire place of your 7 places on, the 7 essentials for healing cancer?
Well, because what happens in your oral cavity will affect the rest of your body. In fact, some doctors are now referring to breast cancer as an infectious disease because if you have gum disease and unhealthy bacteria, an unhealthy microbiome in your mouth, the drainage through the lymphatic system and the blood system ends up in the breast tissue. And they have found pathogenic oral bacteria in breast tumors. And they're wondering if that's a causative effect or is it just part of the whole cycle. So periodontal disease is very rampant. It doesn't mean that you're losing your teeth. If you have periodontal disease, you can just have a little bit of inflammation or slight bleeding and you don't pay attention to it. Very, very important to clear that up. And your teeth are connected to your body through the acupuncture meridian system. So every, when there are things going on in your teeth, it can affect that energy flow to those organs. And so for breast cancer, there's 4 teeth on the top on each side and the 2 on the bottom that are directly connected to the breast tissue. So if you have mercury filling, a silver filling, that's 50% mercury. It's a neurotoxin. It's a metalloestrogen. It literally mimics and stimulates estrogen production in the body. So very important to work with a biological dentist who understands that connection. And cavitations are literally a hole in the bone. It's an infection in your bone. And that's one of the things that I discovered in my second healing journey, through the CT scan. And I had to have 4 or 5 of them cleaned up. You have some oral surgery and they use ozone, they scrape the
Yeah.
bone to get the infection out and use ozone, clean it up very well. And it made such a big difference in my healing. And I see that all the time when women are stuck in their healing um, and they're not really progressing. It's because they haven't addressed either the emotions or the dental.
Mm.
They're good at doing all the physical things, but the emotional part is so intangible. It's difficult
Right.
for them. But once they clear up their dental, we see those numbers drop.
Yeah.
So big impact.
And I echo what you say there about kind of we're big on doing all the physical things. And that was my journey as well. I was doing all the right things to heal my physical body, but ignoring other stuff. And that healing only happened for me when I realized I had to heal all of me, not just one part of me. So the next step is repairing with therapeutic plants.
Therapeutic plants and herbs, yes. So this is where all the supplementation comes in, and so there's foundational nutrition that you need, vitamin D, selenium, magnesium, zinc. Those are pretty basic that we recommend that women start off with that. Things like powdered broccoli sprouts, so that you can have the benefits of the sulforaphane, which kills cancer cells, but also turns on hundreds of healing genes, detoxification genes as well. And then when you get into more of a targeted approach, with your immune system, the medicinal mushrooms and the high dose vitamin C, the melatonin, there's so many of them. And then when you're targeting cancer cells, I mean, everything from curcumin to things like poly-MVA or salicinium, or there's just so many of them that can really impact your healing.
What are your thoughts on essential oils like frankincense for cancer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, frankincense and Roman chamomile, geranium. A lot of the citrus oils are also very beneficial.
I love geranium. It's one of my favorite. Geranium. Am I saying it right? Yeah, my daughter pronounces it germanium, and that's why I now got that in my head. I love geranium. We do geranium and rosemary, and we diffuse it in the house. I love it. But frankincense was a huge part again of. I love how you call it healing journey. You don't call it, you don't refer to breast cancer, but my healing journey after having my son, when all the arthritis symptoms came back, that's when I discovered frankincense. And I use frankincense alongside copaiba and some other specific essential oils, and they made such a huge difference.
Absolutely.
So the last one is early detection.
Yes. And I think we discussed that. We touched on it with all the blood work, mammography, thermography, ultrasound, MRIs can be used as well. And of course, remembering learning what your breast tissue feels like by doing breast self-exams every month, just to make sure that you know the geography of what your breast feels like. So when something shifts, then you're well aware of it, instead of just being surprised one day because you feel a lump. So
yeah. I want to ask you about fasting, because you mentioned that you do intermittent fasting. You don't eat till about 1 o'clock. I found with me, I need to eat a little bit earlier. I usually finish eating at around 6-ish, and then I eat again at about 9 or 10. And that seems to work for me. And I know that it can be done based on your cycle as well. And Dr. Mindy Peltz has a great book on this called Fast Like a Girl, which I think is brilliant, because all the research on fasting was done on men. So we need to do it for us. But what is your take on fasting generally for a preventative approach to cancer?
Fasting is very, very beneficial because it resets your metabolism. It boosts your immune system. There's autophagy, where all the old cells are being recycled and reused, and so it's a great tool. I mean, you can fast 1 day a week just on water and lemon juice, or just water by itself. You can do 4-day, 5-day fast. There's a great program called Prolon, that it's basically a 5-day fast that comes in a kit, and it keeps your caloric intake down to about 500 calories a day. So you definitely are in that fasting mode, but you're drinking some soups and some olives and a few supplements. And Dr. Walter Longo has done so much research, and they've seen that women who use his program or who fast before chemotherapy will actually have a much better outcome as far as die off with cancer, and less side effects from the chemotherapy.
Wow. Yeah, we're kind of chronically overfed, aren't we? And we're not giving our bodies time to heal and repair at night. And then we have that whole extra added thing of we've eaten too much, and then we've got the EMFs coming in from the Wi-Fi, and the mitochondria just don't have that time to repair. So it's kind of a reminder to me to fast a bit more, actually, like the whole day fast as opposed to just intermittent fasting. It's
Right.
definitely great for prevention, I think. So I'd like to end with kind of two questions in one. A lot of women cannot afford to do all the modalities, all the supplements, all the things, and all the testing. And that is just the truth of it. And it is a challenge that so many of my clients face, and so many people I speak to, that they'll say, I want to do all these things, but I can't. I simply do not have the money for it.
Mm-hmm.
My first question, I guess, is what are the free things that they can do? Free, simple, easy things that are already available to us. And the second part of that is, if we are going to spend a little bit of money, where should we be putting our money, and where should we start when it comes to healing breast cancer?
What they can do for free is look at their food, change the food, reduce their toxic exposure in their home. Coffee enemas are not expensive. You can do that. Just, healing your emotional wounds, that does not cost anything. You can do some reading. There's, so many YouTube videos on EFT. On my YouTube channel, I have a 30-day breast cancer challenge where you can tap every day for 10, 15 minutes on breast cancer. So there's a lot of things that can be done. Your mind is a powerful tool. I mean, you are the placebo, right? Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Right.
You can use your mind to literally turn off those cancer-causing genes and turn on the healing genes. And what was your second question about
if people are going to spend a little bit of money, where can they start? What are the supplements, or what are the things that they can be doing, the most important elements?
Definitely supplementation on the basic things that will boost your immunity. And because through your diet, you can do a certain amount of detoxification and juicing. But supplementation, because our food is so deficient, and we need the basic trace minerals and vitamin C and D. Those are basics.
Yeah. I think we've covered everything. Is there anything
Yes.
we've missed?
I will say that my book, Heal Breast Cancer Naturally, you can get it on Amazon. It goes in depth into everything that we've discussed today. And it's got checklists at the end of each chapter. So you can, check to see, okay, what are some of the things I can focus on? And it's not, don't feel like you have to do everything at the same time, but it's a process. And so if you just check off the box on a few things, move on to the next, the following week or next month, this is a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So it's take your time and enjoy the process.
And we've actually got a free gift for everyone that your team offered, which is a section of the book. So that will be in the show notes. So if you're listening and you would like to get that, then you can click the link in the show notes to get that downloaded. And where else can everyone find you?
Our website is breastcancerconqueror.com, and we're all over social media, Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So
all the things. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for this conversation. I know so many people listening will be grateful for it as well, in terms of healing and also prevention, because I think that is key for the next generations as well. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom.
Thank you for sharing my message of hope, Lauren.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reconditioned. I am honestly so grateful to each and every person that tunes in. Thank you also for taking responsibility for your own well-being. You should know that just by choosing to listen to podcasts like this that further your well-being, you're moving more deeply into abundance consciousness. Now, don't forget, I have a bunch of free resources over at laurenvakneen.co.uk, as well as every recommendation you could ever need in regards to your well-being on the LV Recommends page, all categorized for your ease. Thank you also to our sponsors. These episodes would not be possible without them, so make sure to check them out and get some pretty awesome discounts on the show notes. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get updated each time a new one is released. Thank you. I appreciate you.